everyone, and welcome to the Real Clear Politics Takeaway for Monday, November 2nd. I'm Tom Bevan, co-founder and president of Real Clear Politics.
And I'm Carl Cannon, Washington Bureau Chief for RCP. One more day to go, huh, Tom?
T-minus 24 hours, Carl. Let's talk about this race. And let's talk about a couple of states in particular that are going to be the most pivotal in this election. Let's start in Florida. For me, this is where... Look, the race starts and ends for Donald Trump in Florida. If he can't win Florida, it's over. It's a state that we should get some pretty good early data from. They're already counting the absentee ballots, right? And they're sort of known as a quick count state, even if they do have two time zones.
And hanging chads.
And hanging chads and whatnot. What do you make of the race in Florida? What do you think is going to end up being the deciding factor there?
Well, you know, what I think about Florida is this. Is Donald Trump, President Trump, an incumbent who's running on his record, who, if he's behind by a point or so in the polls, as the Real Clear Politics poll average shows, an incumbent loses that race. Incumbents have trouble making up ground, especially when the economy's not doing great. Or is President Trump just sui generis? He's Donald John Trump, who outperforms his polls when he needs to in key states like Florida, and he always done 1 or 2 points better than the numbers show.
And the answer is,
well, that's what we'll know election night. And if he's Donald John Trump, who defies gravity, we're in for a long election night and week. If he's President Trump, an incumbent who was found wanting in the job, albeit by a narrow margin in Florida, then the other swing states might fall into place. So I agree with you. I think all eyes in the world will be on Florida tomorrow night.
And if I put a gun to your head, metaphorically, Carl, I'm not going to actually do it, but who do you think it is? Is it Donald John Trump or is it President Trump?
I think it's President Trump. I think Joe Biden ekes out a very narrow victory there. But it's narrowing. What do you think?
I think Donald John Trump is going to win Florida. I think he's actually going to do better with Hispanic voters. Certainly in Miami-Dade, and I think I think rural turnout in the state is going to be huge.
We've got a piece by Susan.
I just don't. Some of the polls show him winning that state. The polls were off in 2016 there. They were off in 2018 there. So I think he's going to get a little bit of a boost. It's going to be close, but I think he's going to win it.
And I'll commend everybody. Susan Crabtree did a story on Florida for us. It's on our site today, and the both parties, Democrats and Republicans, there I've noticed late breaking surge among Hispanic voters, pro Donald Trump. Remember a couple of years ago, Tom, we said, well, the Puerto Ricans who'd left Puerto Rico in the wake of these hurricanes and settled in Central Florida were going to be the difference. But, 2 years ago is an eternity these days in politics. And what's happening, what seems to be happening this week is, people whose ancestors who themselves are from Cuba or Venezuela are looking at the Democratic Party and thinking, boy, socialism is no joke to us. It's a terrible thing and a serious thing. And Trump's been hammering that. So, yeah, the Hispanic vote there is, you're talking, it's hardly a monolith, and it's Latinos from all over the world.
So let's skip north to the other state that I think is really probably the key deciding state in this election, and that's Pennsylvania. It's where both campaigns have been spending an awful lot of time. They're both going to be back again before Election Day. Carl, what's your take on Pennsylvania? We had a new poll out this morning showing Biden +7 there, and overall, he's leading by 4.3 in the latest Real Clear Politics average, but that's sort of changing by the hour as we're getting more polls. But his lead there has been pretty consistent. But on the other hand, you've seen these massive crowds that Trump's been getting, which the Trump campaign likes to point to, as indicative of this surge of voters that's going to turn out on Election Day and put him over the top. What do you make of what's going on in Pennsylvania?
Well, I'd point out 2 things about Pennsylvania. The first is that Pennsylvania is the reason so many commentators and prognosticators had egg on their face 4 years ago, because they just couldn't conceive that Pennsylvania was going to go for Trump. But the polls were very close. Our last Real Clear Politics poll average had it 2 points. And remember what I was saying about incumbents a moment ago. Hillary Clinton's really the incumbent in that race. I mean, not literally, but essentially. And Trump's the outsider. And 2 points wasn't enough. And the Clinton campaign knew it. And they did some furious last minute work there. And Hillary Clinton went up there. Obama went. Bruce Springsteen went. They really tried to pump up their vote in Philadelphia and the suburbs because they knew that was in trouble. But Biden's lead is twice as big as Hillary's was. 4 points is better than 2 points. And Trump carried the state so narrowly. I still think that state leans Democratic in this year. And as for the crowds, Tom, I've said this before, and I keep reminding my friends, the most enthusiastic last week of election crowds I ever saw in my career was the very first election I covered. It was 1984. And those crowds were for Walter Mondale. So, in states with several million people, rallies with 10,000 people, I don't think, that's like yard signs. It's a factor, but you don't want to get too carried away.
Yeah. Carl, what do you make of, if it is close in Pennsylvania, if Trump does overperform? There's been a lot of talk about, the fact that they have extra days to count ballots that come in. Trump has sort of threatened that they're going to, send in the lawyers immediately after Election Day. I think both campaigns are worried that the other side is going to try and quote unquote steal the state. Are we in for a really rough post-election period in Pennsylvania? Is it going to be that close, or do you think it's going to be a situation where it's the margin is great enough so that it forestalls any real post-election strife?
Well, look, the short answer to that question is we don't know how Donald Trump behaves if he loses an election because he's never lost an election. He ran once in his life. He never ran for mayor or congressman or governor, senator. He never ran for dog catcher or city councilman. He ran for president and he won. So the way he talks about people who lose like they're losers, it makes you cringe and worry a little bit, but we don't really know.
It's his greatest fear to be branded a loser.
Yeah. And so that's worrisome. If he loses, will he acknowledge it? But you know what? I've been saying for months that I don't think, I'm not I don't beg trouble. You know what? If this happens, you and I will have till Christmas to cover it. I'm just approaching this, at least for the next 2 days, like it's a normal election and it'll have a normal outcome.
All right. Well, we will leave it there for today. We will be back with more tomorrow morning and all week long during election week. I'm Tom Bevan, co-founder and president of RealClearPolitics.
And I'm Carl Cannon, Washington bureau chief. And this has been the Real Clear Politics Takeaway for Monday, November 2nd, 2020.